I'm Dr. Ayo, and you are on Black Love Partners. Tonight, I'm very honored to have my friend and colleague, Dr. Umar Johnson, joining us tonight. And I'm going to start off by telling everyone, buy his book. If you have not purchased his book, it is an essential book to have, whether you're a parent or a therapist or just a Black person, you need to read his book. This book is an outstanding guide for what's going on with our Black boys. And we're going to talk about that along with relationships and other things, of course, tonight. So let me start off by reading his bio. Dr. Umar Johnson is a doctor of clinical psychology and a certified school psychologist who serves children and families throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He trains educators and parents around the country, and actually he does this internationally now. Dr. Umar, as he's affectionately known to friends and to colleagues, holds degrees in education and political science, in addition to the clinical psychology degree. He's a former school administrator and school district psychologist. He has worked with special education and disruptive behavior disordered student populations for the past 15 years. It's probably longer than that now, getting closer to 20. Dr. Umar has built a reputation for teaching effective behavioral management techniques to African American parents who are working with at-risk African American children and improving awareness of differential diagnoses for special education disabilities and disruptive behavior disorders. Dr. Umar has served as an expert witness in due process special education cases, consulted with attorneys, and worked with leaders in the political, educational, and faith-based communities towards improving the educational and mental health prospects for Black children. He's a blood relative of Frederick Douglass, the great 19th century abolitionist and orator. Dr. Umar is equally known for his public speaking skills and is one of the most requested African American presenters in the world. We're really honored. Although a school psychologist and educator, as a Pan-Africanist, he regularly presents on political topics that are of interest to the global African family. When not working on behalf of African American children or working with incarcerated populations, he enjoys spending time with his friends in England, the Caribbean, and Africa. And he can be reached at drumarjohnson.com. So without further ado, I want you to be prepared for a dynamic interview with my friend, my colleague, someone who I admire and respect. And once again, I'm going to remind you, get his book. This book is essential for all of us to read. Dr. Umar Johnson, I want to start off with thanking you, first of all, for joining us this evening here on Black Love Partners.
Thank you, Queen Mother. Glad to be with you. Glad to be with you. And also have my second book now too, Queen Mother, Black Parent Advocate, The Art of War for Dealing with America's Public and Charter Schools.
Do you have that one so that you can show it?
Yes, ma'am. And they can order it on my website, drumarjohnson.com.
Okay, awesome. So, part of what I want to talk about, first of all, is who is Dr. Umar Johnson? Because I think we get a lot of different opinions about you, and you don't get an opportunity to really talk about who you are, because I've known you for years. And when I first met you, I was very impressed with the work you were doing, fighting for the rights of Black children, in particular, Black boys in the school system. And of course, when I heard about some of the other activities that you're involved in, I certainly wanted to support you because For me, the things that you're working on are critical for Black people. But I would like our audience to get the opportunity to know a little bit more about you. Tell us about you.
That's an interesting question, Queen Mother, because I am the work pretty much. It's kind of hard for me to describe myself separate from the work because it is my life. You know, it's a full-time job. I'm always serving the people. So I don't know how to describe myself separately. If I was to say the things I like to do in my leisure time, what little of that I have, it's to read, it's to think, it's to write, it's to spend time with my mother. Go to the movies. I love going to the movies. I love the bookstore. I was at both of those today. And that's pretty much it. But I love the work, you know, serving the people is what I do. Pan-Africanism or perish.
All right, awesome. Let me ask you this, since you're a reader, what is your favorite book?
My favorite book, that would be difficult because I have a couple, but if I had to choose one, it would probably be Race First by Toni Morton, the organizational and ideological struggles of the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey in the UNIA ACL. And probably tied with that would be Carter G. Woodson's Miseducation of the Negro, Sarah Bradford's Harriet Tubman, The Moses of Her People, Frederick Douglass' Narrative of the Life, and Dr. Amos Wilson's Garveyism in the Age of Globalism.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, just based on some of those books, it seems to me that one of the things that we need to hear more about is what's going on. What is the current status of Black boys? Because you're an expert in the field working with Black boys, Black children in general. But what is the status of the Black boy?
Well, I would say that the status is that the American public school system is trying to turn every Black boy into a permanent underclass. As I teach, there are 6 stages in the psychoacademic Holocaust, or the school to prison pipeline, as the media calls it. And that is miseducation, special education, psychiatric medication, juvenile incarceration, psychological frustration, and alienation, which leads to stage 6, which is premature extermination. When we deal with miseducation, the first of the 6 steps of the psychoacademic Holocaust, we have to keep in mind that the miseducation of Black boys is deliberate, it is intentional, it is not an accident, nor is it a byproduct of poverty or single mothers or incarcerated fathers or hip hop music. Black boys are deliberately undereducated. They are deliberately denied academic opportunity. And the primary reason why they are intentionally miseducated is to protect white privilege for white male children. We have to keep in mind that one of the main reasons the schools desegregated in 1955, despite the great work, 1954, despite the great work of Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall with their Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court fight, the schools were going to desegregate anyway. They had to, because the Black school, the independent Black school, although underfunded and dilapidated, was educating Black children better than many of the upper echelon white private schools were and segregated white schools were. We have to keep in mind that half of America's major inventions came out of the mind of Black people, and they came out of the mind of Black people before we sat next to white children. And so one of the main purposes for school desegregation was to control the rate of intellectual development for the Black child. And as you can see, ever since they have taken over the education of Black children from the Black community, they have redirected our boys into entertainment. They have redirected them into athletics, rap music. Our boys and our girls too often want to be athletes and entertainers as opposed to inventors and scientists. When the Black community was in charge of the education, we was turning out scientists and inventors. Yes, we've always had great athletes. And yes, even today, we do see inventors and scientists. But when you look at the percentage of our children who go on to be masterminds in the field of invention and science, it has definitely dropped off since before the 1954 Supreme Court decision. And then in 1975, 21 years after school desegregation, we see special education come into the mix. And then in 1980, we see ADD followed by ADHD and 87 come into the mix. And those two weapons right there, the learning disability and ADHD has all but obliterated the hopes of so many Black boys in American school systems.
Well, that's certainly a devastating and troubling outcome. So would you say that this is something that is just in Philadelphia or just in California? Or what kind of span do we see with this problem?
It's global. It's global. It's all across the country, but it's also in Canada. You see it. You see it in London, where I was last month speaking. You see it. You see it in South Africa. You see it in France, where I've been. Wherever you have large numbers of Black people who are living or at least working in close proximity with white people, white racism and white privilege dictates that the opportunities of Black children be controlled and cut down. It's the reason why testing is so important in European societies. Testing is not done to see how much you have learned. Testing is done to strategically and pseudoscientifically deny you access to learning opportunities. That's why they test for mental giftedness. They test to get into the Ivy League programs. They test to get into med school. They test to get into law school. Now, there's almost no correlation between your LSAT and your ability to finish law school. There's almost no correlation between your MCAT and your ability to finish med school. There's almost no correlation between your SAT and your ability to finish undergrad. The reason they test is to deny opportunity. The most effective way they have denied opportunity to Black people in the post-Jim Crow era is by testing our children to death.
You know, that's an important point. And I want to extend that statement to not just our children, but period. Like you said, medical school, psychology, the new thing. When I was much younger, it used to be you were a psychologist with a bachelor's degree. Then they increased it to a master's degree. Then they increased it to the PhD. Then they said you could not be a psychologist unless you passed the test to be a psychologist after going through all the schooling you go through. You cannot be one unless you pass their licensing exam. So it's always a test with the purpose, as you've indicated, whether it's for the children or adults, to keep us out.
Mm-hmm. Now, go ahead, Queen. I was going to say,
go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. I was going to say, testing would not matter if the Black community had its own opportunities for its children. That's the sad part about all of this. Yes, you have Chinese children who take these European-made tests. You know, you have Arab children, you have Latino children, you have Native American children, you have East Indian children who take these European-made tests. But in many of those communities, they have their own opportunities for their children. So therefore, not every child has to pass a white man's test in order to get an opportunity in a particular career. But in the Black community, where we create almost no opportunities for our children in post-secondary life or school, they basically have to sink or swim with these racist examinations. And it's a shame, because with the type of money that we waste as a race in this country, nearly $2 trillion every year, we're coming up on Black Friday, I call it White Friday, in a couple of weeks, where we're going to start hemorrhaging billions of dollars all across this country for useless, worthless Christmas gifts, but we don't even have a single independent Black school in the city of Philadelphia. Most of our major cities don't have a single independent Black school. So when we talk about the psychological Holocaust, it's not just about the children, it's also about the adults as well, because we are still begging the government to solve problems for us that we have the intelligence and the financial wherewithal to solve ourselves.
And that brings us to the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey School that you are currently getting ready to open up in the near future, right?
Yes, ma'am. Well, we're currently renovating right now. Things are going well and have been since we had our second annual festival on September the 10th, which was fantastic. We thank the Most High for such a great and mighty day. So many people came out, great event, great turnout. And the first festival last year on September 11th of 2021 was equally as fantastic. And we thank everyone who came out and supported and also donated so that we could cover the expenses related to that. But to your point, we are currently in a process of renovating the Marcus Garvey Elementary School and the Nat Turner John Jacques Dessalines Gymnasium. We have 4 buildings on our campus. 2 of them are schools. And so we're focusing on the smaller of the 2. That will be the Marcus Garvey Elementary School. And we're hoping to have that completed along with the Dessalines Turner Gymnasium by the end of this calendar year. And once that is done, we will then set our sights on renovating the Frederick Douglass High School, which is a much larger facility. But once the Garvey building is done, it will only be a matter of time before we open up and start educating our boys. It will be a tuition-based school. We are independent. We do not take funds from the government. We do not take money from white philanthropists. We do not take money from white people. It is a totally independent school, and it is the first school in the history of this country that was purchased, renovated, and will be operated with donations from African people from every continent on the planet.
So how could someone donate to help?
They can donate by Cash App. $FDMG School is the Cash App handle. Again, that's $FDMG School. And on the PayPal, they can donate to FDMG Academy. So that would be paypal.me/FDMG Academy and cash.me $FDMG School. They can also mail a check or money order payable to FDMG Academy to P.O. Box 9634, Wilmington, Delaware. That's P.O. Box 9634, Wilmington, Delaware. And I would also give your viewers my cell phone number if they need to reach me to get that information, 215-989-9858, 215-989-9858. I just deposited approximately $11,000 in donation checks and money orders today into the account. And I just want to say thank you to all the donors from around the world. We regularly get donations, Queen Mother, from Africa, from Europe, from the Caribbean islands, from Central and South America. And I have to point that out because a lot of brothers and sisters are under the faulty assumption that most of the funds raised for the school are coming from America. I would say that we receive just as many donations from Africans in the diaspora as we do in this country. And we also want to encourage all of our brothers and sisters, whether they live in America or in the diaspora, to submit their resume if they would like to work at the school or be a part of the faculty at the school. Resumes can be sent to fdmgresumes@gmail.com. I repeat, that is fdmgresumes with an S on the end @gmail.com. We ask for a cover letter and a photo along with the resume. And we do want people to know that your hair has to be natural for you to work at our school. We are not a part-time Black Consciousness Academy. We are full-time. If you are not natural, then you cannot serve as a role model for our children.
I love it. Awesome. So we'll make sure that we pass the word on. Let me ask you another question. How do the educational experiences of Black boys impact the relationships between Black men and Black women?
I would say it has impacted it significantly in the modern context, because what we have seen is that America, after it deindustrialized the inner cities beginning in the 1970s, which means they took away the factory jobs from the inner city that sustained so many Black men and kept them as the economic heads of their families. And then they went into our high schools and they deindustrialized them as well by taking out the electrical program, taking out the plumbing program, taking out the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning program, taking out the carpentry, the woodworking, the computer networking, the welding, the auto shop. They took out the skills that pay the bills. And after they took out the skills that pay the bills from our inner city comprehensive high schools, they then dropped off the crack cocaine, which created the mass incarceration of society in which we live in today. And while they were deindustrializing opportunities for Black males, they were systematically offering a little bit more opportunities for Black women. Now, let's be clear, Black women are still the victims of racism. It's just that the power structure decided to give them slightly more opportunity than they gave to Black men. And so now we have a situation now where Black women are the only women in this country, arguably Hispanic women as well, but definitely Black women are probably the only women in this country who out-earn and out-educate their men. No other group has the woman as the primary breadwinner of the family. And that was done by design. But I do want to say this, Queen Mother, the fact that the Black woman has more education than the Black man in and of itself is not a problem. The fact that she out-earns the Black man in and of itself is not a problem. The problem is the interpretation that she has for why she out-educates and why she out-earns. And it is also an interpretation of the Black man. To what do we attribute her having a better economic opportunity or her being given more educational opportunities? It only becomes a problem when the Black man says the Black woman is working with the white power structure to destroy us. When you add that interpretation to the reality, you've just turned the Black woman's education and income into an enemy of the Black man. Or where the Black woman says, the reason I out-earn you, the reason I out-earn you, and the reason I out-educate you is because you are shiftless, lazy Negro who doesn't want to do nothing but smoke weed and make babies. Now, if the Black woman adds that interpretation to the reality, now she has set herself up to be weaponized by the power structure to destroy Black men. So the education and income alone is not sufficient to cause a problem between Black men and Black women. It's the negative interpretations of why she out-earns and out-educates us that is the problem.
So in other words, you're saying that the institutionalized racism is putting in place a system that will turn Black men against Black women and Black women against Black men.
Oh, absolutely. It's no coincidence, Dr. Ayo, that we see the rise of radical Black feminism and have seen that in the past decade or two. That's no coincidence. Radical Black feminism was deliberately introduced into our community by way of our sisters on the college campuses to, again, criminalize the Black man in their eyes. It's no coincidence that there's a rise of same-sex relationships, transgendered relationships, mixed race relationships. It's no coincidence that when you turn on the TV or see any of the commercials on the major networks, it's always a Black man with a non-Black woman. It's always a Black woman with a non-Black man. They're either in a mixed race arrangement or they're in a same-sex arrangement because the power structure wants to eliminate the Black family. They want to destroy the traditional Black family. And why do they want to do that? Because without no traditional Black family, there's no traditional Black community. And if there's no traditional Black community, then there's no Black power you have to be worried about at all. So they are really against the man and the woman. But they are so strategic in doing what they do that some sisters have been led to believe that the white man actually cares about them. And some Black men have been erroneously led to believe that the Black woman is working with the white power structure. You do have Black women who work with the white power structure, but you have Black men who work with the white power structure. My biggest issue in the dialogue between Black men and Black women as it relates to Black love, Black romance, and the future of the Black family is that neither side is more at fault than the other. Whenever you hear these conversations in popular media and on social network, the man is blaming the woman more. Yo, you are more at fault for this. And then the woman says, no, you Negroes are more at fault for this. And I'm saying we are equally at fault for this. And we have to understand that there's a hidden hand at play in this situation that wants us to tear each other down, as opposed to standing up together and staring down the real enemy of both the Black man and the Black woman. And that real enemy is white supremacy.
Excellent point. We only have to ask the right questions. Who benefits when Black men and Black women are fighting each other and don't come together and build strong Black families?
The white power structure benefits. And you know who loses the most? Black children. Because
Absolutely.
One of the most toxic side effects of this negative dialogue that we're seeing is Black children are watching this. I mean, after all, 70% of our children are raised by single mothers. So that means most Black children have a cell phone that is not supervised by a parent, because the Black mother has to work multiple jobs. She got to raise multiple children. She's not able to supervise all those children. And so social media has become the new de facto babysitter in 21st century Black America. And so as a result of that, our children are watching Black men publicly tear down Black women. They are watching Black women permanently tear down Black men. There's one sister on social media, all she spews is negativity about Black men. And she's went so far as to say that Black women should abort their Black male fetuses lest they be born and grow up to be another problem or another enemy to the Black woman. So she's recommending that Black women abort all male fetuses. Do not let them be born. And you have Black men who are out here telling other Black men that they should not date Black women at any cost. Find women of another race. This is toxic. It is disruptive. Okay, it is absolutely unacceptable. And if we keep this up, we won't have to worry about the media needing to brainwash Black children. We won't have to worry about public school needing to brainwash Black children, because this negative back and forth between Black men and Black women, in my opinion, is sufficient enough to condition Black boys and girls to not go after Black love when they're old enough to look for a partner.
Wow. So what are the key elements for creating strong Black men?
Well, here's the thing. When we're talking about creating strong Black men, we also have to talk simultaneously about creating strong Black women, because those Black men have to find a mate, and those Black women have to find a mate as well. And for me, I think the most important ingredient, or one of the most important ingredients, is making sure you're raising children who are unapologetically committed to the best interests of the Black community first, above and beyond the interests of any other organization, religion, institution, or population. Most of our children are being raised to be coons, Queen Mother, the boys and the girls. We have allowed religion to take us away from culture. And in religion taking us away from culture, most Black boys and girls are not raised with any type of loyalty to the community. If you don't have loyalty to one's community, why would you then need loyalty to the Black family? The family only functions as a unit of the community. So if there's no love for the community, why would I feel obligated to stay with my woman? Why would I feel obligated to marry a Black woman? Why would I feel obligated to fight for my marriage, fight for my household? Why would I feel obligated to do that if my mother and father only raised me to be loyal to Jesus or loyal to Muhammad, but not loyal to Black people? And you even see right now with this snow bunny crisis that is way out of hand. You have Black men who have no problem dating outside the race, and many of them who prefer to date outside the race. And now we see Black women as the fastest growing interracial dating population in the country. And almost none of our recognized scholars, our nationally recognized scholars, are speaking out against interracial marriage. I'm the only one I know on the popular national platform who says this is unacceptable. Most of our scholars are quiet on the issue of interracial marriage, which is just as destructive to the traditional Black family as any of these other ills that are being pumped into our community.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I want to come back to that. I want to give you some support, because clearly I just did a presentation talking about the fact that the only way you can have a strong Black family is to have a Black man and a Black woman. Anytime you have any other formula, it's not a strong Black family. And I think we have difficulty with that because we have other people defining who we should be instead of us defining who we are and who we should be. But let me ask you to go into a little more detail about, you said the church is a problem. How is it that the church is a problem?
Traditional Black religion reinvented itself in the post-Dr. King assassination era of the 1960s. As you know, Dr. King murdered in 68 and 67. You had the long, hot summer when you had more than 100 confirmed race riots throughout this country. And so the Black church grew very afraid in the aftermath of Medgar Evers' murder. The Black pastor grew very afraid in the aftermath of Malcolm's murder, in King's murder, in Fred Hampton's murder. They grew very afraid in the aftermath of all of these assassinations. And so the Black church decided collectively and individually that we are no longer going to be the vanguard of the Black struggle. We're going to reinvent ourselves, and we're going to become accommodationists as opposed to agitationists. And so the Black church no longer agitates for Black people. They would much rather accommodate for Black people. For example, Queen Mother, you can't name a single Black megachurch right here in Philadelphia. You can't name one, not a single mega church or medium-sized church that is at the forefront of the fight in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania or the country to do something about miseducation, to do something about mass incarceration, to do something about gentrification, to do something about police extermination, and to do something about economic apartheid. No church in Philadelphia is fighting any of the 5 major fights that need to be fought for Black people. But I can promise you, every one of those churches had a politician in their pulpit at some point over the past couple of weeks who are there to try to brainwash and manipulate Black people into coming out on November the 8th to vote for politicians, Black and white, Democrat and Republican, who have absolutely no Black agenda, no plans to improve the Black community, and no solutions at all for the 5-headed monster of miseducation, mass incarceration, gentrification, police terrorism, and access to wealth. The Black church is a problem in my estimation. And when I say church, I'm speaking of all denominations. I'm talking about Muslims as much as Christians, because they're not doing nothing for the Black community either. Everybody's praying, everybody's studying, everybody's reading, but nobody's building and nobody's fighting back at all. And it's unacceptable. Black religion takes 3 things from Black people, Queen Mother, that we don't have enough of and can't afford to lose. What are those 3 things? They take too much money from us, they take too much time from us, and they take too much emotion from us. Black people cannot afford to waste their time. We can't afford to waste our money. We couldn't afford to waste our emotion. And Black religion is robbing us of all 3.
That's a powerful statement. I've frequently noticed that churches don't tend to even help their own congregation. If you're struggling financially, they'll simply tell you to pray. They won't create an opportunity to employ their own congregation, and they don't circulate their dollars amongst their members. We find that they don't have Black schools. I thought there should be Black schools in every Black church to take care of our children, and yet it doesn't happen. And when I analyzed it, I realized that if you look up the line, you'll find that every Black church is really run by Caucasians.
That's
who
very
they
true.
answer to. That's who they answer to. That's very true. Okay.
And if they don't answer to a Caucasian, they answer to some politician, they answer to some white philanthropist, they answer to some European power, somewhere in the country who's funding their operation.
Absolutely.
They're useless. They are part of the problem.
Absolutely. I concur. You won't get an argument out of me. I'm sure there'll be people who will have an argument, but it won't be me. Um, if we were to give some advice to Black women, what would be the key characteristics that you feel that Black women need to be aware of as being desirable for Black men?
Couple of things. Number one, it's going to be very difficult for a woman, a sister, who does not have sexual discipline to find the man she's looking for. You must have a greater degree of sexual discipline than the men you date. You absolutely have to have that. The thirsty factor is a very real thing, and it plays a decisive role often in a man's selection of a mate. The quicker you give it up, the quicker you may be given up. And so it's important that sisters protect the sanctity of their womb. Be very slow to get intimate. And I know we live in a generation that is very sexually promiscuous, both Black and white, but it is important for Black women to stress to the men that they date that they value their womb. That is extremely important, number one. Number two, I think it is important, and this is as true for men as it is for women, and that is you have to find people who are mentally balanced and spiritually healthy. And this is for men and women. I would argue, Queen Mother, that a big reason for relationship failure in the Black community is not the relationship itself. It's the toxic individuals who come into the relationship. So what you often see is not a relationship problem, but a spiritual imbalance or a psychological imbalance or a emotional issue that is being added to a relationship. Two unhealthy people cannot make a healthy relationship. So if two unhealthy people cannot make a healthy relationship, the focus then, the target of intervention should be the man alone and the woman alone. There's no need to even talk about the relationship because you two should not be in one right now. And the issue in the Black community is too often we use relationships as a drug and a distraction to get away from personal family issues that we don't feel like addressing. So I will date somebody, not because I want to build a future. I'm dating them because I need them to distract me from my baby mom, distract me from my ex-husband, distract me from the job I don't like, distract me from my alcoholism, distract me from my marijuana addiction, distract me from my depression and low self-esteem. So if you're going into a relationship expecting somebody to solve your problems, that relationship is bound for destruction. It cannot, because only you can solve your problems. Nobody outside of you can do that. But a lot of us don't want to put in the work necessary to reconstruct our lives. So we would much rather dump our dirty psychological laundry off on somebody else's front steps and give them the responsibility for doing something what they cannot do, and that is make you happy. When I talk to the young girls in the high school, and I'll be talking to some young people tomorrow, I always tell the girls, because girls are quick to say, young ladies are quick to say, I want to find a man to make me happy. I always hear that. And I'm always quick to tell them, he don't exist. Not Denzel Washington, not Terrence Howard. There's no man that can make you happy, because happiness is an emotion and a state of mind. And the only person who controls your emotions and your state of mind is you. So the first thing we have to do, Queen Mother, is we have to do something about the spiritual vampire complex in the Black community. And what I mean by spiritual vampire complex is we have emotionally wounded Black men and emotionally wounded Black women floating around the Black community, not trying to fix themselves, but looking for victims, people who they want to make responsible for their happiness. We have an epidemic of unhappy and miserable people in our community. And these are the very people looking for a relationship. You don't need a relationship. You need some therapy. But what happens is a lot of us don't have enough self-love to work through our problems. So we constantly looking for relationships because we need validation from an external source. And we fail to realize that if you cannot validate yourself, nobody else will. One thing you cannot hide from another person for too long. There's one thing a man cannot hide from a woman for too long, and there's one thing a woman can't hide from a man for too long. One is self-esteem, and the other is your emotional issues. You can fake it for a few months. You might even can fake it for a few years, but sooner or later, your self-worth will show itself, and your emotional baggage will also show itself. You cannot hide those two forever. And that's why in the early stages of dating, Queen Mother, we have to be a bit more strategic and a bit more scientific. See, the dating game, and I call it a game because that's exactly what it is. We're gaming each other up because nobody's being honest. When you go out on a date, no man is telling you, I'm a drug addict, I'm a recovering alcoholic, I hate women, I beat women. Nobody's telling you that. No woman is saying, hey, I'm here to take every dollar I can get from you. I was hurt by men in the past, and I want to pay that back by harming and exploiting every man that I can find. And on the side, I'm a closet freak, and I'm not going to tell you that either. Nobody's telling each other what their deficiencies are. They are projecting this social mask. So you have a woman projecting a false sense of who she is. You have a man projecting a false sense of who he is. So this ego, you have this ego mask, right? Because the ego never wants to reveal its true limitations. The ego never wants to admit that it's wrong. The ego never wants to show anybody that it has things about itself it's not proud of. So we're projecting this superficial issue with one another. And guess what tears it down, Queen Mother? Pregnancy, cohabitation, and marriage. What is it about pregnancy, cohabitation, and marriage that forces the ego to stop falsifying who it really is? When a woman gets pregnant, her ego says, I'm having a baby with this man. I no longer need to hide who I am. The man says, I'm having a baby with this woman. I no longer need to hide who I am. When you move in together, he says, I'm in the same house with this woman. I'm not going to be walking around acting like somebody I'm not. She says, I'm in a house with this man. I'm not going to be acting like somebody I'm not. Or they get married. This is why people can date for years and then get married and be divorced in 1 year. Because the whole time you dated his public self. You didn't date his private self. You dated her public self. You didn't date her private self. You say, how they date for 20 years and get married and break up? Because they didn't really know the other person. Time does not teach you who another person is. You only know who they are when they are vulnerable enough to expose themselves, which means they feel trapped. Pregnancy, cohabitation, and marriage. And that's why I'm a strong proponent, Queen Mother. Although I know religions don't support it, psychologically, a lot of people are unhealthy, and I support cohabitation, not permanent. But I think a woman and a man need to live together at least 3 months. At least 3 months, so you can find out exactly who you are dealing with, because you don't know that other person until you got to wake up with them, go to sleep with them. You don't know that other person until you see how they wash their behind, whether they clean, whether they take out the trash.
Right.
See, you didn't know him and his baby mom talk all night long on the phone. You didn't know that until you moved in with him. So we have to make sure we are investigating people thoroughly and fully before we start falling in love with the idea of being in love. See, a lot of times people think they're in love with the person, Queen Mother, but what they're really in love with is this dream, this image of the person that they have created in their own minds. This is what I always say to people. If you don't like yourself, you're not going to find anybody else who will. And if you don't love yourself, you're not going to find anybody else who will. If that relationship with self is not solid, is not healthy, no relationship with anyone else will matter.
That's a powerful statement. Now, I'm looking at the time and realizing we don't have much left. I want to be able to get other people in, but I want to ask you one more question before we allow other people to get in. But I really wish we had all day to keep this discussion going, because you have some very powerful statements and information. But let me ask you one more question. What are some of the things that Black men and Black women should be doing to bring us together?
Okay. I'm going to go into the home where the children are. In our homes, there's three things I don't see enough of. I don't see enough of Black men and Black women being intimate in front of the children. I'm not talking sex. I'm talking, I love you. I care about you. I'm going to hug you. I'm going to sit on your lap. The children are not seeing mom and dad intimate and happy with one another. The marriage almost becomes like a business where they tolerate each other, but they're not intimate and happy. We have to model appropriate relationships. We have to model Black love to our children. So that's number one. I don't see enough intimacy between husband and wife in front of the children. So that's number one. Number two, I don't see mothers promoting Black love to daughters, and I don't see fathers promoting Black love to sons. In fact, I often see the opposite, Queen Mother. I'm seeing men tell their sons, don't trust none of these bitches. And I'm seeing mothers tell their daughters, don't trust none of these ninjas, if you understand what I'm saying. So I am seeing, and this is so prophetic because, as you know, there's a very famous African proverb that says the destruction of a nation begins in the homes of its people. I see it, Queen Mother. The mother is training her daughter not to trust Black men, and the father is training his son not to trust Black men. So if you are being ingrained by emotionally unhealthy parents to not trust the opposite sex, why would you? And I think another angle to this Black male-female relationship crisis that we're having, Queen Mother, is I don't think the elders have been held accountable for their role in it as well. And what I mean by that, I see elders who are actually adding fuel to this dysfunctional fire between Black men and Black women. They're not sitting them down and say, listen, we're going to sit down and talk through this and talk about what you two need to do to get your act together. We don't have a council of elders that a woman can go to if the man ain't doing right, who will check the husband, or who the man can go to if the woman ain't right, who can check the woman. We need our elders. They're not organized. And many of them, Queen Mother, what I find is they feel insufficient to function in the role of elder because they have committed some of the same offenses that are now being committed by the men and the women. But this is what I would say to them. Your mistakes are your mistakes. And there's nobody better than someone who made a mistake to educate somebody as to why you don't want to repeat the mistake that I made. So we need the elders to get together and create systems of accountability. Our elders are necessary for the systems of accountability, and we don't have that. And that is a very big reason why we're running to divorce court. Queen Mother, I believe that if we had a functioning, active, assertive, and aggressive council of elders, half the divorces in the Black community could be prevented. The reason we're at divorce court is we don't have the elder council to go to. The reason we're at family court, we don't have the elder council to go to. The reason we're in child support court is we don't have the elders to go to. And as you know, none of these courts give a damn about the Black family. They don't care about the man, the woman, or the child. And there's nothing so ironically unacceptable as Black men and women going to the same justice system that enslaved you to sort out your relationship problems.
True. Sad, but so true. Dr. Umar, this has been a very powerful hour. Your words of wisdom and certainly your insights are just invaluable. And I would love to be able to talk with you more. I would like to not have to stop right now, but I think it would be unfair of me to not allow some of the people who came here to hear you tonight to not have the opportunity to ask you some questions. So,
Certainly. And before you go to that first question, Queen Mother, I did want to make the announcement that on Saturday, November the 19th in Philadelphia, Saturday, November the 19th in Philadelphia, I will be hosting for the first and only time, because I only do it once per state, the Black Parent Know Your School Rights Bootcamp. This is open to any Black parent, any member of the community. You don't have to have children. If you want to learn how to be an advocate for our children from 8 in the morning until 8 at night at 22nd in Allegheny at the Connections Training Center at 22nd in Allegheny from 8 until 8, I will be doing an entire conference, not a lecture, but a training conference on how to protect your children. We're going to go through the special ed disabilities. We're going to go through the DSM, disruptive behavior disorders. We're going to talk about the 504, the IEP, how to review a psychological evaluation, how to conduct yourself at meetings, how to understand the federal educational amendments, the Pennsylvania state regulations. Any parent in the country who wants to learn how to protect their children, whether go through autism, the learning disability, the reading, the ADHD, the conduct disorder, the emotional disturbance, the intellectual disabilities. If you want that knowledge so you can protect your children, you can register at drumarjohnson.com. They can also text me for the flyer and for the registration link at 215-989-9858. But that is Saturday, November the 19th from 8 until 8, Connections Training Center, 22nd in Allegheny. And you must be registered by November the 1st. The deadline is November the 1st because we're going to have lunch catered. We're going to have continental breakfast, and we have to make sure we have the count on how many people's coming. So you must register by November the 1st.
Awesome. Once again, thank you. That is something that I know we sorely need. And I'm going to urge everybody, and we'll make sure that we pass the information on up until November the 1st when you have your cutoff date. So let us, looking at the time, push forward. And what we're going to do is remind you, first of all, that you're listening to Dr. Umar Johnson, and I'm Dr. Ayo, and this is Black Love Partners. We're going to now take some questions from the people who are here. And I believe that, as I said, we're going to have people post their questions in the chat, and we're going to have a male and a female present their questions so we can have balance each time. And please remember to keep your questions short so that we can get through as many questions as we can.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good evening, Tanya.
Good morning, and peace and blessings to everyone. And thank you for help. Thank you for holding this space. Really quick question to Dr. Umar. I'm very curious. Very often we talk in the educational system about closing the achievement gap, right? But there's also an aspect of really closing the relationship gap, because when we look at many of the teachers in the educational school system, the average teacher is a white female in her 20s, right? So there's something about them teaching our Black babies that does not resonate. I'm curious to know, what recommendations would you suggest that can be cultural, I'll label it cultural transformational recommendations that we can sort of advocate both as parents and as educators and administrators to really disrupt and change the effects of our Black babies being in these schools. Did that question make sense?
It did make sense. And I would say 3 points to you there, Queen. Great question. Number one, white women cannot be responsible for the education of Black children. As you know, American public school, charter school, independent school, American school teachers, period, are overwhelmingly white women. They are racist, they are hostile, and they are dismissive of the emotional needs of Black children. They do not relate to them. They do not establish relationships with them. They treat their job like it is a business. As you always hear white teachers say, I'm here to teach, I'm not here to raise children. Well, the truth is you're actually there to do both. And if you're not interested in doing both, you should not be in this classroom. But of course, when teachers are hired, nobody asks them whether they care about the type of children they're about to teach. Because as you know, teaching has simply become a way for a lot of white women to pay their bills when they leave these other careers, because a lot of them have no business in the classroom. And once they join the union and they've been teaching for a couple of years, you can't get rid of them until they're ready to walk off the job. So the union issue is a big problem, because if I'm a principal in the school and I need a better English teacher, guess what? I can't get rid of the one that I got necessarily. I can write her up 100 times. I have to give her a professional development plan that's not going to work because she don't care about Black kids. She got too many years in to be fired. Nothing's going to happen. So I think union control is an issue. I think white teacher racism is an issue. And I think white teachers are too often getting a pass because white women are, they have a white female privilege, obviously operating in this country. White women could get away with anything. All they have to do is cry once they get accused of what they did. So that's one issue. We have to build our own schools. There's no way around it. It's a shame that Black children are going through what they're going through when their community spends $30 billion on hair and beauty products every year. It makes no sense that they're going through what they're going through when we spend billions on electronics every single year, but we won't open up schools for our children. But in the interim, to answer your question quickly there, good sister, we have to make sure we establish relationships with every single child in our classroom. We have to have a relationship with the whole class, but you have to establish contact with that child and let them know that you love them. I always say a good teacher is like a good therapist. My degrees don't matter. My experience don't matter. My credentials don't matter. The number of years I've been on the job does not matter. The only thing that matters when somebody walks into your office as a therapist is the only thing that matters when a child walks into your classroom. Does this person genuinely care about me? If they say yes, you're going to be able to help them. You're going to be able to teach them. But if they say no, you're not going to be able to help them and you're not going to be able to teach them. So much of academic failure for Black children is due to the emotional unavailability and abandonment that our children experience from white teachers.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So Dr. Umar, I had a quick question. Knowing the social dynamics in the space that we're currently in, I have a perspective that we're kind of at the infancy with everything changing with technology and the exposure of the internet. Do you think that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better, just in the time that we're in right now?
Things will get worse before they get better if Black people do not take responsibility for their own destiny. There's so much we can do to insulate our community from the aftershock of this 21st century agenda that the white power structure have, from COVID to mass unemployment. As you can see, the prices to everything are going up through the roof. They are intensifying poverty, they're intensifying homelessness, and they are intensifying crime by virtue of the fact that people are getting too desperate and need to feed their children. This is all being done on purpose. But if we worked together, we could alleviate a lot of these ills. Our biggest problem is our unwillingness to come together as a people. We are the only people in this country who refuse absolutely to come together and be accountable to one another. And that's what the great fear is in the resistance, is the lack of accountability. I don't want to be accountable to you. You follow me? You're a Black man. Why do I have to be accountable to another Black man when white folks have trained us for 400 years that Black people ain't worth a damn? And I certainly should not have to answer to one, but we'll be accountable to a white person. We'll be accountable to a Mexican. We'll be accountable to an Arab, Chinese, but we don't want to be accountable and responsible to one another. And along with that is the other problem, psychoeconomically speaking, and that is Black people do not. We are resistant to using our money as a weapon for our political and economic liberation. There is no program I'm aware of right now where the Black dollar is accumulating so it can be weaponized on behalf of Black people to push forward a political and economic program of emancipation. We don't want to use our money. That's why voting for Black people is the be all and end all. Everybody's talking about November 8th, November 8th, November 8th. The only reason why November 8th is so important for Black people is we have no other strategies in play. We have no other plan, no other agenda, no other solution. Our entire future is based on voting some white man or white woman from the Democratic Party into office who's not going to do a damn thing for us. If we don't save ourselves, we will not be saved. Jesus ain't coming for you. Muhammad ain't coming for you. Joe Biden damn sure not coming for you. We're going to have to save ourselves, or we might not make it into the next century.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem, King.
Now, unfortunately, we are out of time. We have certainly other people who have questions. Is there a way, Dr. Umar, that they could perhaps get those questions answered at a later date or in another way?
Yes, they could. And what we can
Email?
do, Queen Mother, we can schedule a part 2, Queen Mother. And what we might do when we schedule a part 2, we might make it a 2-hour instead of a 1 hour if you're able to do that.
Oh, we would love that. Absolutely. I would be thrilled to have you come back. I am so excited having you here today. Hearing you say that you're willing to do another part 2 and a 2-hour one, absolutely. Let us discuss doing that, because certainly you have so much more information to share, and people have so many questions that I think it's a rare opportunity for people to have the opportunity to talk with you. So I would love to do that. Let me just say, I apologize to those people who we didn't get to in terms of your questions. We will save this information and we will get back to you. If you've put your name and your email in the chat, we will make sure you know when our next session with Dr. Umar will be, and we will make sure that we contact you. But meanwhile, stay in touch with us so that you can hear what's going on. And what I'd like to do right now is once again remind you, Dr. Umar, do you have your new book? I only have your former book, your
Yes, ma'am.
first book. Would you please hold that up for the audience? Please support Dr. Umar. Purchase his books, read them. You will not regret it. You will be upset with yourself because you didn't have it sooner. This is not only for parents, but I, as a psychologist, found this book invaluable in understanding the school system issues that I frequently have to work with some of my children with. The clients who come to me with problems regarding their school systems, knowing this information helps me to do a better job as a clinician. So purchase the books, support the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey School, and we will make sure that we provide that information on how you can do that to you on our site in Discord and through Black Love Partners. Finally, I want to again thank Dr. Umar Johnson, who once again has been an awesome source of information this evening. As I said, I go way back with him many years ago, and it is so exciting to see what you're doing, and I appreciate what you're doing. And I want you to know that I'm going to step up my support, certainly, and make some regular donations to the school. And I want to thank everyone who came this evening. I want to remind you that I'm Dr. Ayo, that you're watching Black Love Partners, and we want you to like us on YouTube. And remember to share with others. Tell other people what's going on. Share what's happened this evening and what you heard from Dr. Umar. We also want you to subscribe and leave us comments, because we want to know what you need so that we can make sure we provide that. Finally, check us out on Twitter and on Instagram. Please make sure you make those donations. And as Dr. Umar has indicated, if you have to skip, a pack of cigarettes or a drink, or maybe do without that donut or that cup of coffee that costs too much to begin with, send that money to the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey School. We need to start taking care of our own people. We have to stop expecting other people to take care of us. I'm Dr. Ayo, and this is Black Love Partners. Thank you for joining us.